All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Laurie McCabe, and thank you so much for joining this session, Channel Evolution at the Edge. I have really a treasure trove of channel experts here joining me to talk about some of the trends and how things are evolving in the channel with some of these new technologies. So before we dive into the questions, we'll do a couple of introductions. First of all, myself, Laurie McCabe. I am the co-founder of SMB Group, and we're an analyst and industry research firm that focuses on small and medium businesses who, I think, as most of you know, consume a lot of their technology solutions through the channel. And we'll just kind of go around the horn here and get everybody introduced. Eric, can you start?
Sure. Hi. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Laurie. Eric Hembree. I lead the U.S. go-to-market team for IoT and XR for Ingram Micro, based out of Buffalo, New York, and been working at Ingram for over 10 years now. Happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Steve?
Hi. Steve Sponseller with Kepware, which is part of PTC. I run a small team devoted to the various channel types that we have partnerships with, as well as business development. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Steve. Roland, your turn.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Laurie. Hi, everyone. My name is Roland Ducote, and I'm a Programs Director within Aero Intelligent Solutions. My team has focus in two areas. One is working with our hardware and software technology partners on enabling market-ready solutions. And then second, we work in building a channel with systems integrators as they deploy these solutions. So great to be here. Thanks.
And Nathan, last but certainly not least.
Yep, thanks. I'm Nathan Kehr, and I lead a channel sales team as part of a division of Honeywell Connected Enterprise. And we sell an enterprise software framework for integrating all different types of disparate systems, primarily for building automation, but also for industrial applications as well.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, everyone, for introducing yourselves. Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that, you can definitely chat to us in the chat window, and I'll try to keep the Q&A window open. So if people have questions as we go along, we can see what they are and start addressing them, as well as the ones we've kind of put together to kick things off. So let me just start by saying, we do a lot of research, and a lot of these areas that we're talking about, IoT, edge, AI, machine learning, digital twin, all these things are really new in a lot of ways. I mean, some of them may have been around for a while, but for the average person in running a business, let's say, these are still things that might be a little foreign to them. And the technologies are also, they're evolving very quickly. And we find a lot of business decision makers, just figuring out what solutions in this big wide world of technology can really help their business. That is one of their toughest technology challenges. So I'm wondering how your companies help the different stakeholders in the channel, because a lot of channel partners are smaller too, right? How do you help them keep up with all of this change, stay current, get the right solution so they can help their own customers? And then what do you see for them as their big challenges and opportunities in all of this? And we can start off with Nathan.
Sure, and that's a great question, Laurie. Yeah, I can speak firsthand, having been in this industry for about 10 years and watching the evolution and watching some of the language change, the topics of concern on the client side change. It really is a tremendous difference today from what it was even just 4 or 5 years ago. Most conversations. We talk a lot about the convergence of operational technology networks and IT networks. So people in different functional groups within most organizations, both in terms of our channel partners and our end clients, have had to educate themselves on these different topics and trends. So that's primarily most of our effort has gone into being in a thought leadership position in the industry, talking about what's possible and, more importantly, what's feasible with the technology, because there's a lot of fantastic technology that's available, that may still be a couple of years away from being,
Yeah.
commercially viable or readily implemented on a wide scale. And so we kind of take that angle of attack when working with our customers and keeping them educated. It's about how are you going to implement this, in a way that aggregates, a solution or synthesizes a solution using other kind of readily available components or existing technology.
Anybody else want to take that? I know all of you are pretty active in trying to educate and provide some thought leadership around this area. Steve, yeah.
Yeah. So Kepware is an interesting animal. I didn't really give much of an introduction of what Kepware does, but we're essentially known as being a protocol translator in the industrial segment. So you have machines that are run by what's called PLCs or RTUs out in the field, and we're like the Rosetta Stone for unlocking the protocols in order to get data from those machines. We're interfacing software, so we run behind the scenes. We're pretty lightweight, inexpensive, and we do a lot of volume, and that is a challenge when it comes to educating the channel because we literally at the end of the day, have thousands of users, and they could be channel partners like system integrators, or they could be end users at the end customer operations themselves. And so this is like an interesting question. How do you keep everyone up to date on what the latest greatest is? And I feel like we do. We take a multi-pronged approach. We put as much information out there, with tools and videos and how-tos and facts, just as much as you can for people that want to learn like that. On the flip side, though, we do try to touch as many of our partners as possible, and we do have kind of a pyramid distribution globally. We have preferred distributors and all the parts of the world and so forth. And so we kind of think of them as an extension of the Kepware family. We want them to be as up to date as we are as to what's going on. And then they have their own channel, geographically located that they need to do the same thing. So it's like not only educating them on what's the latest with us, but also educating them on like what the mechanisms for getting that information out there. But still, with technology and everything, I believe that at the end of the day, there's nothing better than the personal touch of scheduling a call, visiting someone when that's possible, and hopefully that'll be more possible in the future.
It's kind of the age-old challenge of technology. I think it's just technology seems to evolve faster and faster, but it's always, the onus has always been on the developers of the technology to really educate the channel and the end users. And, I think the good thing, a lot of us, there's more ways to do it, such as this video conferencing and LinkedIn Lives and, videos and everything else that maybe, 20 years ago, it was all like paper documentation or something really scary like that. Anybody else want to chime in, or do we want to take this great question from Anonymous here? Well, I'll move to Anonymous because I always love the audience questions, and I think this is a great one. And this person's asking, at what stage of a company, and they're from a startup, should we begin looking at the channel? My advisors say it takes a lot of resources, yes, and investment like dedicated personnel and sponsored events to build a channel. So you guys all probably have great experience in this area. Anybody want to take that one off the bat?
Yeah, Laurie, I can jump in on that. We face this quite a bit, especially on the IoT side and the emerging business side. So many of these startups have really great tech, right? But struggle sometimes at getting started in the channel because of a lot of those requirements that were called out in the chat there. So I would say that, we're there as your partner, right? We want to work with you. We want it to be successful. Are there some things that, are kind of, requirements out of the gate? Sure, but we're willing to work with you, and, we're willing to make smart business decisions if we see that there is the true need that's out there. So I would say that, the best way to start is just to engage and start the conversation, right? We'll go through and we'll have those planning sessions and those meetings to take a look at, what's possible. And, we want to define success the same way as our channel partners and our vendor partners. But ultimately, if there's a great tech that you're rolling out there, and there's a willingness to work with us and make sure that the channel partners are being taken care of and supported, then let's do it, right? It's something that we can't be blind to when it comes to all of these emerging technologies.
Yeah, I'd like to ask just a little bit of a follow-up on this question, which is, in this area, it seems like there's always a lot of moving parts to every solution, right? So it's not like if you're going to set up a new cloud solution for CRM or something like that, where, under the covers, there's a lot of technology that goes into building that. But, it's mainly software, and it's, you're obviously running on servers, but with Edge and IoT and all this kinds of stuff, there's so many hardware and software and technology and operational components. Does that make this different in terms of the channel?
I would say so, but again, it's very specific, right? IoT is very solution driven, and that solution has to have true business implications. I always say that IoT is a technology sale. Or it's not a technology sale, it's a business discussion, right? And that's where we really want to understand, from a go-to-market standpoint, how are you, positioning to those customers, right? How are you better understanding the business requirements that exist out there to present tangible outcomes? Because if you're trying to pitch speeds and feeds, then get in line, right? That's been the same old song and dance for the last 40 years of IT, right? So I would just say that if there is a willingness to solve true business problems and have that scalability to move horizontally across the stack, not just vertically, then you can integrate very nicely into existing infrastructure.
Anyone else have any thoughts on when is the right time to get involved in the channel? Is it at startup time? Is it a little further down the road? What do you think?
Personally, I think in order to scale, if you want to have any type of scale, you have to address the channel.
Right off the bat.
A startup can't have multiple salespeople all over the world or all over the country. You really do need to rely on the channel. So to me, it's like one of the highest priorities, but it might be dependent on exactly what their company does and their offering.
Yeah, to kind of build on both Steve and Eric, I would say it's when you reach a point where the product is mature enough and your client base has grown enough that it's now self-funding, right? And you want to start scaling. That's the point where you should look at hiring a channel manager or partnering with a channel company and start, look at the channel as a series of parallel business partners, right? And that plays into Eric's comment a couple minutes ago about it becomes more of a business discussion. I think a lot of people think if they just partner with a channel company, or if they just find a couple of resellers in the channel, that it will, overnight create, automatically create sales for them. There's a lot of legwork that goes into kind of setting your business up to be a good, a good vendor to the channel. So,
it sounds like it would be a good major in business school, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, nobody knows.
That's missing in a lot of them. All right, so moving along a little bit. So another catch-22, I guess, with emerging technologies and bringing them to market is that incumbents or the established players, they have existing channel and customer relationships, but they may have legacy solutions, not all of them, but some of them. And a lot of the small startups, they have more modern sometimes or more innovative technology and solutions, but not necessarily those go-to-market relationships. So how are each of you, if you are trying to bring together these two worlds so that maybe some of the technology or the established technology players can, partner more easily with some of these new vendors to bring a more compelling solution, I guess, to the market in different areas. And this is a huge range of areas. So whatever part you feel like addressing is fine. Oh, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll take a first swing at this. I'm sorry, to be honest with you, my phone was ringing and my headset, unfortunately, is tagged to both my computer and my phone. So some of that was cutting out as I was scrambling, trying to
no worries.
The phone down. So Kepware's been around for 25 years. And in some markets, we are the incumbent with a lot of the partners that we deal with, especially, I think, me maybe talking more like technology partners for this type of discussion. But and so in the industrial control space, we've been used for 25 years, and we have a healthy customer base and channel base in that market. But that's not where our growth is. Our growth is in more of the IIoT or digital transformation market, where we don't necessarily have that 25 years of incumbent type base so in that case, we kind of have a symbiotic relationship with a lot of these technology partners. Take ZEDEDA, for instance. I mean, they probably haven't been around for 25 years, but they are going right after the market that we want to grow in. So in that case, we rely on them, as much as they rely on us for bringing along for whatever projects we might come across out there. And I will just say this in general, partnerships are an interesting relationship. You really need to, both companies obviously need to benefit from it. If it's a one-way street, then it's unlikely that it's going to be terribly successful. So you do need to kind of establish at the beginning of these discussions, how is each company going to benefit from the partnership?
And what role can distribution play, like Ingram Micro?
I mean, to Steve's point, it does require partnerships, right? It is something that, we see this all the time with, IoT being that true convergence between the IT side and the OT side, right? Neither side fully understands the other, but they both are really, really good at what they do. I think, let's face it, right? They don't always play nice in the sandbox. That's where, finding those right partnerships are so important. I did a panel a couple of years ago in person, back when that was still a thing. And it was around the value of and the power of public-private partnerships to deliver smart city solutions. And this is no different with the IT and OT side. It takes those partnerships working together, leveraging each other's strengths to really make these solutions work. And that's how you compete with the incumbents. It's by joining them, right, to deliver that better solution than they're able to do alone, right, Laurie? So that's what start is. It takes a lot of that.
It definitely takes a village, it seems to me, in this area. Roland, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think as emerging technologies go, it's very similar to the question around startups and how do we get involved with a channel. I agree. There's several roles within a solution to really get something to market. In Arrow's world, we look at that complete ecosystem value chain, where really our partners own the end user relationships. But along the way, you have to develop those strategic alliance partners. In many ways, you're going to utilize their technology, or they may utilize yours as the startup, or if you've got your own intellectual property. But I think our focus has been, being at this now for 5 years, is really focusing in those market-ready solutions and solution plays to build what that offer might look like through the channel. Those offers are generally vertically focused or use case focused, and they come from really partnering with product, technology, service organizations to bring something forward. Because I think that's, when you look at the channel, it really is, it is about alliances and an ecosystem. So how can you create this symbiotic relationship to really bring things together for a last mile integration or customization? But ultimately, there's always room for IP and value creation when you're working with the channel.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question, please pop it into the Q&A window. But I think that was like a good segue into the next one I have, which is there are so many, it's almost limitless the amount of possibilities we can have for delivering, solutions using edge computing. But I'm really interested in each of your takes on this in terms of, give me kind of your top couple of first case or first use case priorities where you think this is really going to nail this, the value of this, the value proposition. And we could just kind of go around. I think I'm going to start because I don't think Nathan's spoken for a while. So,
yeah, in most of the applications that I deal with, you're talking about things like, like more macro analytics and things like that are going to take place at multiple layers of the solution architecture. Some of that's going to be done in the cloud or in a server somewhere. Some of that's going to be done, maybe at a campus level, and then some of it's going to be done truly at the edge. And I think it really depends kind of on the application. From where I sit, I think a lot of very, tangible, physical, real world, like life safety considerations, real-time data analytics, facial recognition, things like that, absolutely need to be taking place closer to the edge. And then things like, direct histories and data lakes for, information spanning a decade or more, those types of things, obviously, we can push to the cloud or we can push to a server. And I think, one of the most interesting facets of my job is working with people who are kind of figuring that out every single day, because there are different client needs and different requests, and they could be coming from an end user, they could be coming from a consultant, they could be coming from some of those startups that we mentioned earlier, right? People who are just looking for kind of market trends and data and trying to figure out where their app should live. So I think it's, somewhat use case specific, but I always think about, the closer to the edge that the compute needs to happen is typically where that physical interface, that immediate physical turning a piece of equipment on or off, opening, shutting something, those types of things.
Yeah. Have you seen one, and all of you can pipe in on this as we go around the horn. Have you seen a use case that's really surprised you, or you said, gee, I never thought about that, but that could be really powerful?
Pretty much every day.
Every day. Okay, can you tell us one, Roland?
Yeah, I was going to say, it shouldn't really be like a surprise, but
let me find it. So it was really an interesting application. It was an AI vision. I think there's a whole stack of applications associated with AI, and it always really surprises me how developers and software organizations are building out individual models to solve very specific things. So this was, we'll say, paint bubbling on an industrial vehicle. So but it's something that's maybe replicable, but every environment is different. So if you're going to paint a school bus versus a tank versus a car, there's different things that the customers end up caring about. So to Eric's point, right, it's really about a business discussion. So what can AI vision, again, in this application, what can AI vision do to help your business?
Yeah.
But I didn't think people would care about paint bubbles on industrial machinery.
Those are the things when you get down to it that bring all of this to life, right?
I honestly thought that Roland was going to tell the story that I was going to tell, and maybe this was just one of those industry stories that everybody knows about. So it deals with paint, and there was this paint there was this paint factory that every other Friday the paint jobs weren't coming out well. And I'm no paint expert, and I'm hearing the story secondhand or third hand or whatever, but essentially, they could not figure out why are we not having successful paint jobs, on certain days. I mean, they didn't even realize it was every other Friday at first, I think. But once they started bringing various systems together, and this was maybe the HR system along with, the factory system, MES system or whatever was kind of running that paint job, they realized that on certain days of the month or certain days, scheduled days, it was barbecue day outside, and the particulates from the barbecuing was actually entering into the HVAC system and affecting the paint quality. So they, probably were going to have a hard time figuring that out if they weren't able to kind of integrate these various systems that typically, the same old talk about being in silos and
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've just heard a lot of fascinating ones, and I just think that those are what spark people's imagination, both as end user, businesses that might find that technology valuable, as well as somebody that says, oh, I have a great idea for another solution, right? So I'm going to go to another audience question. And this one, again, I think, we hear this in all facets of technology, but it's just as relevant here. And the question is, are channel partners becoming more value added? I know some of these firms have capability in architecture, procurement, et cetera. We need more services than simply a reseller. So, the reseller channel partner model, supposedly that's been, partners have to get more value add. We've all been preaching that, it seems like, since I started in technology long ago. But I mean, what are your guys' take on that? Are they becoming more value add in these spaces we're talking about?
I think it needs to, evolve with the channel needs, right? I mean, just like Micro, we've been around for 42 years. We started and cut our teeth on supply chain logistics, right? But over the past 40 some years, we've evolved, from solutions aggregation to, designing more services, right? Financial services, programs, migrating from CapEx to OpEx, those types of needs, design services, site assessments, right? There's endless amounts of services that are needed to be successful, and, understanding where partners may have gaps in those areas. That's fine. We expect that, right? Not everybody can be all things, right? Even Ingram Micro, we use partnerships to deliver on services that are needed out there. But I think the big thing is understanding that gaps are fine as long as you look to a partner to augment those areas with those services that you're looking for.
Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts? I just think this is such an important area. Because a lot of times these resellers are going to be the ones that are selling and to some extent at least delivering and implementing and supporting. And it is, again, it's a relatively new area. So, how are we helping them develop more of those skills they need?
So I would say short answer is yes.
I can tell you both in...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can tell you, both in qualitative and quantitative terms over the last, especially 18 to 24 months, we've seen the most progressive, technologically forward, kind of constantly, working on their own R&D. And I used the word earlier, synthesizing, right? People who are synthesizing solutions, people who are really searching the market for best-in-class technologies and bringing those into their portfolio and learning how to support those types of applications. Have been considerably more successful by pretty much every metric than those who have simply relied on the, kind of the old reseller model. So yeah, I think in my mind, there's a huge difference between the two. One segment is growing dramatically and the other is starting to fall behind.
Good. And on another kind of related tactical note, how has COVID affected this trend, and also how has it affected just overall vendor investment in the channel? Because obviously, again, a lot of these resellers are smaller, and the larger companies, whether it's the vendors or the distributors or whatever, have to invest to educate them. So what do you see in terms of this investment in the channel?
One thing I've noticed, sure. One thing I've noticed, and this pertains more to the technology than anything, is I think with people working remotely and working from home, that people have started to really question why their consumer technology is not being matched at their job. And we have a lot of different apps and tools and things like that that we all use in our personal lives that we may use in a much different way than we do, for enterprise purposes or at work. And so that's one of the things I've seen is a lot of our channel partners and distributors have started looking at technologies that they can bring into their portfolio to sell B2B, that more closely replicate what people are doing in their own time and their own personal devices and things like that.
Yeah, I would say, when specifically speaking to how COVID has changed investment in the channel, I think it's done a few things. I think it's both increased investment. It's also moved it around a little bit. Prior to COVID, companies were looking at IoT as ways to improve efficiencies and become more competitive. That quickly changed as their needs were pivoted to worker and customer safety with temperature monitoring solutions and people tracking instead of asset tracking, right? Enabling that remote working environment that Nathan was just saying with extended reality or XR solutions. These all became an overnight need. So a lot of the investment that was previously budgeted for was kind of shifted into these new needs. I would say as far as future needs and trends, I think it's going to center around three main areas, and that's smart spaces, healthcare, and Industry 4.0, with XR solutions being the enhancer to all three of those. Mandates are going to be driving a lot of the adoption in those areas, and we see more and more of them passing into law, and IoT directly solves for them, right? So there's no doubt that COVID has changed us forever, and the innovation that's happening overnight is pretty remarkable, and more companies are figuring out how to harness that power of IoT and make it a real integral part to their business.
Yeah, I know. I think with COVID, you could just see all the new use cases, right? As companies started to adapt on every level. I mean, not that it has anything to do really with IoT, but just people don't even want to touch a menu at a restaurant. So now you scan a QR code. But yeah, absolutely. It's definitely kind of probably changed or shifted the priorities around. So the advent of these new technologies, it's about enabling new business models too, not just about new technology, right? An example we heard in an earlier session, 5G is opening up an opportunity for companies that aren't traditional telcos to deliver wireless networks to end users. So I'm wondering, and I'd love to hear from all of you on this, and I'll start with, I think, Steve this time. What do you see as the new business model opportunities in the channel based on the trends in edge and IoT and things like that we've been talking about today?
Yeah, so the angle I will take on answering that question is, I'm not sure if I necessarily know of new business models as a result of something like 5G, but certainly its effect on what's possible in various industries. So the first half of my career at Kepware was helping Kepware become stronger in the oil and gas market. Kepware is traditionally in the discrete manufacturing space, really known, in the automotive and working within the four walls of the factory, where communications more or less, practically endless as far as the amount of networking and so forth. But oil and gas, in some cases, like upstream and midstream, complete opposite. You have potentially thousands of devices out in the field that you're trying to communicate to, and traditionally it's like radio or satellite communications, which are very low bandwidth, high latency. So trying to do some of the awesome advanced analytics and applications like that IIoT brings to the table is not really possible because there just simply isn't enough data coming through. Something like 5G and the ability for anyone to offer that definitely is a game changer in that industry. So I've been definitely looking forward to seeing how that can transform what's possible in industry like that too. It's very expensive operations. If something goes wrong out in the field, sometimes you don't even know it until the guy driving around, he's making his rounds, and once a week he's hitting that particular field, and then he realizes something's wrong. Then he's going to come back the next day with the proper tools, work instructions, and so forth. So anything that can be done to reduce, the time that you're aware that there's a problem and then time to fix a problem can have huge effects.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of domain-focused systems integrators, and when you think about a specific domain, think of something as specific as oil and gas, or the machines that are actually associated with that vertical market. So if you're a manufacturer of magnesium or aluminum parts using a CNC machine, you are working with a service provider to service that machine. That we look as a domain-focused systems integrator. So they've got badges and expertise that other organizations don't, and they can start to offer other things. So machine condition monitoring as a service. So they've already got the badges and certifications to touch the machine. They can create additional service models to help support their customers. But honestly, I kind of go back to Anonymous and their question around how channel partners can be more value added. And I think it's listening to organizations as they are going through that digital transformation, utilizing your domain focus and bringing a new service to market.
Right. I mean, the way I look at it, the people that start, the companies, the end user companies that start taking advantage of these things are going to get so much efficiency and so much insight that, if they do it right and use the right solutions, that, the competitive advantage is just going to be enormous. And again, from the, and you guys might disagree with me, but from the standpoint of that end user business, if I can find that right solution that's already been pretty much, put together with all these component parts and, kind of vetted for me, it should just give me that boost pretty quickly, I think, compared to a lot of traditional enterprise technologies that I'm thinking like putting SAP throughout your organization or something. So these things, I think, in a way, are going to really help a lot of the companies that use them change their business models to be a whole lot more innovative. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I know I got a tip from somebody in an earlier session that everybody, and it kind of dovetails with why isn't there like a business course or an MBA course in channels management? So I just wanted to ask you guys, how does someone kind of get involved if they say, oh, it seems like what Eric or Roland or whoever does is so interesting. How would I start a career in this channel business and technology? I get, I have a technology expertise in some area, but, how do I get involved in the channel end of it?
So I remember when I finished my MBA, it was in 2008. The closest thing that we had to an introduction to the channel was sales and Salesforce management. And there was like a week where they're talking about channels, and I was working at Arrow at the time and just kind of shook my head. I mean, the textbooks, I'm not sure if they're right, but I disagreed with a lot of the things that were said in my class. I think there's a great body of literature associated with alliances. When I heard that same thing earlier, I looked up the book, but Steve Steinhilber, Strategic Alliances, 3 Ways to Make Them Work, is a fantastic book in terms of how to work within alliances and how to create alliances programs. And I think that's the 2020 version of a channel, is really an alliances or ecosystem and versus, like, I think the traditional channel model.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about community and ecosystem now, and there's very few areas where one company can do everything, and you really have to bring everyone together. Yep. Any other thoughts on that? Or things you guys did in your own careers to get where you are today?
I mean, I see a lot of people decide over time, maybe to go from a manufacturer, a software developer, to a distributor, reseller, channel partner, whether that's on the implementation piece or the distribution piece. I think there's a personality piece of it that comes into play, but it's also a different type of business, a different type of relationship, a different type of sale. And kind of like Roland was talking about, everybody, gets some basic level of B2B sales training at some point in their career, right? Especially in any kind of a customer facing role, but deciding which type of organization you want to work for and how you want to develop partnerships and things like that is something I think people should really consider more and earlier on in their careers. So I made that decision. I've always primarily worked for vendors and manufacturers, and that's where I'm most comfortable. But a lot of people, were able to make a transition either from being on the client side to going to a reseller, or from a manufacturer, software developer side going to a reseller. So.
Yeah, and I think whatever part of this ecosystem you're in, you're part of it, right? You are involved in the channel if you're managing it from the vendor perspective, distribution, or your actual partner out there. And it's just kind of fascinating to see how it's all evolved, because all the players are so dependent on each other, and there's got to be a lot of give and take in this kind of model for it to work. And just out of curiosity, if there are any people out there, do any of you offer internships and things like that to business majors that might be interested in something like this, learning more?
Yeah. I mean, we have summer internship programs. We have year-long internship programs, many of which have led to full and part-time positions after the fact. We have an intern right now who is doing a double major, but at UCLA, but somehow has time to come on part-time with us, even throughout September and onwards. So.
It's called youth, Eric. Youth.
No, I think it's a great opportunity to get your feet wet and explore something new. I know that when I started Ingram 10 years ago, I understood what a distributor was, but I didn't know IT channel distribution, right? It was completely foreign. Yeah. Why do we even exist? Why don't OEMs just sell directly to end customers and resellers and all of that? And then it took a very short period of time for me to realize the value of the overall channel and what role everybody plays in that space and how integral they are to that process. So I mean, educating yourself. There's no real good book on it, right? To go out and do it, except for learning on the job, right?
Yeah.
I would say that you really have to experience it and fully appreciate all the different areas. Just like work in retail, right? Everybody should have to work retail once in their life, and everybody should have to work in the channel. So
yeah, I always say everybody should have to be a wait person, a waitress or a waiter, a server in some part of their lives, because you learn a lot that way. That's for sure. But okay, well, we're pretty much at the end of our time. I really, really appreciate all of the insights you guys have shared with us, and I'm sure that you're available if somebody wants to send you an email or follow up on anything you've said. So I'll put that out there. And anyway, thank you all again, and have a great rest of the event.